Thunderbolts reviews are out, and they absolutely love it. 120 reviews and 88% of people think it's above a 5. And it's easy to see what they like about it. This is a movie about therapy, trauma healing, depression, loneliness, and puts a focus on mental health.
We all have things that we regret.
But I have so many.
With a visceral 27-minute therapy scene that left Dan crying and confused. It was so much fun. As such, you can understand why the critics loved it. Finally, there's a movie that they can see themselves in, rather than wondering if their own beliefs are what's causing all of their problems. Instead, we're gonna make the saying a reality that misery loves company. And Thunderbolts definitely seems like a miserable movie.
You feel fulfilled?
Yeah, so full, so filled.
When Verbal Riot said that the Thunderbolts wasn't good, I said I'm looking forward to the best movie about depression and mental illness of all time. And this is your movie. I've never been so excited. I just wish it was on streaming so I could properly take the piss out of it. The more they cry, the more I'm going to laugh. I learned that in Doctor Who with Cutie Gatwa. We've got tears, folks. We have hit left off. Watching Hollywood talk about how they're unhappy with the consequences of their own actions, I could watch that all day. Although I might be alone in that, as early Thunderbolts tracking forecasts a soft opening box office, with tracking coming in at $70 million US. Although if you scroll just 2 paragraphs in, that quickly drops to $63 million. If we're losing $3.5 million a paragraph, by the end of this article, we're going to get down to 40. And that might be a tough opening when their budget was $200 million. That sound you hear isn't the hype engine of Disney's marketing department, but the bottom of the barrel being dredged up as Marvel exploits a handful of D-list characters before rebooting its proven and most popular heroes. Even Variety thinks this movie is simply the sacrificial lamb, the last pile of manure thrown on the fire, simply because, well, it will make a stench, at least it'll stop us freezing to death for another few hours. They're the losers of the MCU. But as Variety says, the mysterious asterisk masks the real reason to watch this movie. Florence Pugh. And I can understand why you'd want Florence Pugh to lead this kind of group rather than Bucky, because she's an incredible actress. Look at her. You try and find another marketing picture of her with a different facial expression than this. You can't do it, and that kind of consistency is hard work.
Assignment is... Oh wait, hang on. Assignment is complete.
To utterly paralyze your facial expressions without Botox, that's a skill in itself. That's why Thunderbolts takes the MCU back to what it's always done best. You hear that a lot. Marvel is back. This is a return to form. You know all those previous movies that were ass for years? Well, this isn't one of those. Say the people that liked all of those movies, that they now say were ass for years. A lot of people have suddenly started disliking the movies that they previously liked. Polygon even open, it's been a long time since a Marvel movie felt like a Marvel movie. It doesn't even have new heroes worth caring about. But Thunderbolts proves that Marvel still has compelling tales to tell. It's finally the shot in the arm Marvel needs. Thunderbolts is incredible. Very capably dabbles in a darker tone, touching on mental health of heroes and villains. Focus on mental health. Thunderbolts stands out because it features flawed characters dealing with depression and regret. Entertaining in blips, but overall mediocre. Superficial depiction of depression is incredibly frustrating. It's not just another solid entry into the MCU. It's one of the most beautiful comic book films I've ever seen. Florence Pugh is incredible and brings the uncomfortable conversation of mental health to the forefront. They prioritize maturity and emotion. Perfectly edited. Anchored by Florence Pugh.
Bucky, you have the wrong people. We have all done bad things, but we can find a way together.
A good amount of heart and an effort to address mental health, therapy, and trauma. Florence Pugh's skills are wasted on a weak script that fails to handle mental health properly. The story is boring, the music dull, the action scenes forgettable. Adds a mess to where the MCU is going. A harsh reminder that the franchise is far from its glory days. It's great, visually daring, emotionally resonant. Pushes mental health to the forefront. This is, at its core, with one of the issues of not knowing who you're making a superhero movie for. If you're making it for a male target demographic, then you should defeat the villain by punching him in the face. But if you're making a superhero movie for a female demographic, then they're going to want to talk about feelings and depression, how they're all really upset, and how that guy, he's not doing the bad things because he's evil. No, he's just the same as you, and so if you were in a situation, you'd be doing the same things. that means you can't really punish him. No, it's simply a circumstance which has made him this way, because he's no different than any other human on Earth. And so if you can't punish him, if you can't just rampantly punch him in the face as a measure of justice, well, now you've got to deal with the environmental factors that simply he couldn't help being subjected to. This is how you end up with real-world situations, like what happens when we send mental health providers instead of police. So I'm not surprised that the movie focuses on feelings rather than punching people in the face. Hollywood at the moment has absolutely no idea who their target demographic really is for different genres, which isn't surprising when they've crowbarred people that don't belong in that genre into making those genres. And yes, I know this movie's made by a bloke, but he's hardly Sylvester Stallone, is he? I think we already know whether this guy believes in equality or hierarchy. So when Thunderbolts asks who wants an off-brand Avengers, well, you can say the answer is you do, as the MCU delivers a movie that channels its glory days and is finally back on track. Not really sure they're convincing anybody. I know the critics love it, I know the social media reactions are amazing. Fully expect whether you like this movie to simply come down to the idea of whether or not you think that criminals should be subjected to mental health providers or police. Do you care about talking about the villain's feelings or punching him in the face? Subject to getting what he deserves.
Boo.
Otherwise known as Justice. Now, the Irish Times has long been one of my favourite review sites. Not just because it said the Rings of Power had new hobbits that were filthy, hungry simpletons with stage Irish accents. That's $1 billion well spent. But also, the Marvel's review, the MCU has disappeared up its own black hole. After that, I was sold. And as this review has the same author, Donald Clark, as the Thunderbolts review, I wasn't gonna miss this. Florence Pugh stars in the least bad of Marvel's trilogy of obscure team-up flicks. There's a lot to unpack there. That is a lot of clarifiers to say least bad. Like, it's not the least bad Marvel movie. No, it's of 3 movies that have to be team-up flicks, but not even just that, obscure team-up flicks, which then gets defined as Who the Bucky Are These People trilogy, being Eternals, The Marvels, and this. This is an irreverent, semi-comic romp. I always found that a weird thing to do. This is an irreverent, semi-comic romp with a 27-minute therapy scene that focuses on mental health and depression. The only time any of those things is going to be funny is if he actually jumps. It's a shame the project feels flimsier than the average TV show pilot. But after the catastrophe that was Captain America Brave New World, at least we can celebrate that it has a middle between its beginning and end. Thunderbolts works best as a jokey romp at home with tolerable quips. Probably isn't a ringing endorsement about the depression.
There's something wrong with me.
Will it revive the uncertain fortunes of the MCU? Impossible to say. But Fantastic Four is next. This movie was so ass, they're like, yeah, Fantastic Four's coming up, I can look forward to that at least. And that's why I'm not sure I can trust the positive reviews. Because all the hand-picked social media reactions that came out first, the glowing ones, they all repeatedly use the same language, brought up the same points. And then you have things like the Irish Times that aren't beholden to the companies, which talk about entirely different things and don't like it. As more reviews have come out, there are more people that don't like it. Those tend to be the ones that aren't depressed and miserable. When they drive over a bridge, they don't glance longingly off the side. Which, to be fair, if I lived in Hollywood, I'd understand. I've been to London, I know your pain.
Boo.
But there are some reviewers which take a more, aggressive tone to their reviews. For that, if ever you want to laugh about a movie, you go over to the Mary Sue. Thunderbolts is Marvel's at its best. 4.5 out of 5. Sad superheroes. They're miserable just like me, for real, for reals. This is a movie made for those of us who never feel like we're enough. Do you see what I mean about the people that like the movie about depression and mental illness? They watch it like, that's just me. That's me. Never stop to think if the belief system they're forcing on other people might be the cause of their issues. This is a dark character study of mental health. This is Yelena's story. Which, to be fair, whenever you look at her face, you're like, whoa. You're a miserable bellend, aren't you? I've always loved the White Widow, because there's a sadness to her. I related to that aspect of Yelena. These reviews, it's just like me, for real, for reals. Is this why Florence Pugh wanted to jump off the second tallest building in the world? It's always been a life goal of mine.
Or maybe I'm just bored.
You constantly feel like you're not enough, and you have to find your own way to push back and fight. We get to see how deep Yelena's sadness went, and I love that this movie gave that to me. When they were saying that representation is important because they can only understand the world through their point of view, so you have to put them in the movie, They even mean their mental illnesses. And in a male story, that's not the point of the story. A male story is, it doesn't matter what's wrong with me. I'm gonna have to do it anyway because nobody else is gonna do it. You put that in a box over there, your feelings don't matter because the most basic thing about you. What matters is you get the job done. You sacrifice yourself for other people. Whereas in this, it's like, I'm gonna wallow in my own pain. I feel so seen because I'm important. And so rather than looking at ideas such as justice, what it means to be a superhero, and hierarchical perspectives of the value of different lives, instead it just focuses on altogether more shallow basic things like feelings. Gone down from ideas, past the events, down to just what the people feel about themselves. Do you care how often Florence Pugh cries? This is the movie for you. It allows the characters to grow and be emotional. This movie wouldn't be anything without Pugh. It's built on her heart. She's struggling, has to find her own way and help save the world. It's weirdly inspiring. We can't all find a way to open up about our mental health struggles, but we can learn about it through Yelena's journey. Can you understand why people are talking about a 27-minute therapy session? It does sound like the Mary Sue has gone through one. Rather than being told her feelings don't matter, instead, now we've got to go, I understand. I hear you.
I thought it started when my sister died, but now it feels like something bigger. Just a void.
Thunderbolts is what I've always loved about Marvel movies. Depression. But of course, this is the Mary Sue, and so that wasn't going to be enough. We're going to have to make a topic about not having dangly bits. I suppose if having depression and crying is something that you value about yourself, probably not much of a stretch that not having dangly bits is a major part of your personality as well. That's why, if you're mad about Florence Pugh leading Thunderbolts, get over yourself. What we do get is attacking the fans. There are some select fans on social media angry that, check notes, women exist in Marvel. I don't believe you. I bet that those same fans would be incredibly happy with Scarlett Johansson's first scene in Iron Man. It doesn't matter whether they exist, it's why are they there? And obviously, in a male movie targeted as a male target demographic, they should exist in the movie. But men. I mean, look, there's a reason why in the Underworld trailer we had this shot.
They are the...
Kate Beckinsale was told that that shot would be in the trailer as it was being filmed. I don't think she agreed because she wanted them to really understand her personality traits. So as we don't understand how to make profitable movies, I happened to look at some of the replies to my social reaction to the film. Didn't put any of them in the article, so I don't know what she's referring to, but this is her tweet. It proves that Florence Pugh can and should lead the MCU. She's a force to be reckoned with, to which my response was, another review about misery and crying. It's heartbreaking and bring your tissues. I don't know if I'm one of those replies. But obviously, as the Thunderbolts has existed, she decided to count the amount of dangly bits between the group. I haven't seen anyone else bring this up, and I don't think it's relevant the numbers in a movie. I simply think it matters why those people are in the movie. Are they targeted at the male demographic or the female demographic, as they want entirely different things from movies? This is why The Handmaid's Tale doesn't have male viewers, whereas superhero and action movies are largely male demographics. And so of course you should cater your movie to the people that will be watching it, if you want it to be successful. But she starts talking about fighting for Ghosts and Ava's rights. I have no idea. But I don't think the angry men in the replies, really wish you'd link some of the comments, would have been funny. They're not out fighting for ghost rights. What they're doing is saying things like women shouldn't lead Marvel movies, and complaining that Pugh is clearly the star. Would have been nice if he had shown one, really. But then, she talks about Natasha Romanoff, and how she didn't get her own movie until Black Widow. No man had a problem with Scarlett Johansson.
I want one.
No.
If anything, Scarlett Johansson had a problem with Scarlett Johansson, despite being up for it when she was of age. Now she says that women are undermined, underserved, underappreciated, and underpaid. When she got to the Black Widow arc of her career, don't you understand? I'm just fighting against sexism. Because despite men being absolutely happy with Black Widow's portrayal in Iron Man 2, Scarlett Johansson wasn't. Many years after she filmed it and her career was over. Only afterwards did she criticize the hypersexualization, which is what you want if you're aiming a character at the male demographic. If you're aiming it at the Handmaid's Tale audience, well then you should probably cast Scarlett Johansson in that, rather than Iron Man 2. And of course, all the articles ran with this, that Black Widow is a thrilling remedy for the sexism of Marvel movies past. Because in that, well, they just covered her up and stripped her of anything that men would want or like. Which would explain why it flopped at the box office and made a loss. We're not going to get anything like that from the Mary Sue, though. Their famous nuance they love to talk about so much. These are people that talk about equality and think everybody's the same, and so they can't understand that different people want different things. No, for them, it's simply a numbers game. that women aren't featured as heavily as men. I mean, yes, Yelena may be the main character, but there's almost always a man there. And yet, despite other people clearly having a better grasp on how movies work and are successful, they're just inner replies complaining about the superhero. And if you think this way, you're boring.
We're so boring!
More than anything else, get over yourself. Do you think it's Marvel's job to make a movie that you want? Of course it isn't. Get over yourself. Just give them the money. It doesn't matter whether they're making a movie for a target demographic that isn't you. You have to like it anyway. Don't you understand? She's the default human. If you're a default human, then everybody else that isn't you is wrong. It's built wrong. There's something fundamentally wrong with them as humans. And it's their job to change until they're like her. I don't really understand hating a character because of their gender. What? This is the Mary Sue. That's all you do. Superhero movies still have a huge villain problem. While studios are making huge strides in inclusion, villains are suffering from a lack of diversity. What's that, if not hating characters because of their gender? Or how about male film critics still dominate the industry? And that's a bad thing. You're hating male critics because of their dangly bits. They even made an article about is the use of mirrors in films gendered? Why Star Wars increased representation is important. I mean, simultaneously, it's so unimportant that it actually shouldn't factor into whether you like or dislike a character. But it's also massively important that they exist. I don't even mind that they contradict themselves as an ideology. It's just, shouldn't make it so obvious to disprove. But if you hate a character simply for their gender, you're boring! Boring! More than that, you're not engaging with the media at all. I agree. You're literally looking for men to watch blow stuff up. And that's it. To be fair, caught red-handed. I am looking just to watch men blow stuff up in movies. That sounds amazing. And I know what she's gonna say. Boring! That's because you're not a bloke. You didn't evolve over decades to love war and weapons and violence. It's not part of you, and you think you're the default human and believe in equality, so you think everybody's the same as you. But it's not true. This is why you're a fan of The Handmaid's Tale, and they're a fan of exploding things. You can find it boring. It's not made for you. And that's why a movie about Yelena being depressed isn't made for blokes who want to watch things blow up. Well, most people would think that's fine. You just know your target demographic, and then you make a movie catered to that audience. We're living through a really weird period full of people that can't comprehend that anything else can exist different than them, that they are the default human and we're all the same. And so constantly think that movies have to change to make things that they like, which would work for in rom-coms, Handmaid's Tale, any kind of weird femme fantasy about fairies doing unmentionables. But it doesn't work in action movies, superhero movies, things about justice and violence. Now, instead we end up with something heavy and emotional, having a good cry in the movie. Because the one thing that men are known for, it's just crying all the time. Well, not the ones that put actual milk in their coffee, rather than trying to work out how you milk an almond. But I simply think the idea of discounting a movie because a woman is leading it is so sexist and performatively so. Because you can't understand that different movies are made for different target demographics. And so when you make a movie with a female lead talking about her feelings, that's not aimed at men. This isn't a complex idea, but it does require an ability to abstract, to comprehend. Back in the day, everybody would have absolutely loved a Black Widow film. Scantily clad Scarlett Johansson shooting people in the face. That's a movie that can't miss. That's basically the Underworld franchise. Are you under the impression that Seven of Nine wore a figure-hugging costume because people were really concerned about her mental health? Seven of Nine was aimed at the male target demographic, but you despise this because it wasn't made for you, and you would consider Seven of Nine sexist, I'm sure, because to you, that word just means anything that isn't made for you. And that's where she goes, oh, you just hate women. It's like, no, you just can't comprehend my position. Get a life and learn how to actually be a person, and becoming a person to her would be becoming something that she can understand as a person, which is her, the default human, you know, the one who's depressed and miserable. Maybe that's not someone to take advice from, eh? But no, Thunderbolts is the best Marvel movie in years for one simple reason, because, well, it's not single-handedly saved the MCU good. It might make you rethink that you've got superhero fatigue, because if you're tired of a niche, the thing that can really reinvigorate your interest in it is depression and therapy. This really is becoming a metaphor for Hollywood, isn't it? Beginning to sound like the only way Hollywood could save itself is sort of a Clockwork Orange scanning people through their eyes scenes. And that's why, even though there are plenty of reviews, I mean, you've seen the percent, and they're not just better than a 5. many of the reviews are giving things like 4 out of 5 stars from the Radio Times, praising Florence Pugh because she's leading the group and it's emotional, or even the BBC's the greatest Marvel offering in years. The Endgame subtitle has felt a lot more appropriate than the studios may have liked. Thunderbolts stands out because it's a ragtag bunch of depressive, dysfunctional loners, and they can't stop grumbling. The underlying issues of the Thunderbolts are the focus of the narrative, them dealing with shame and trauma, guilt. When it comes down to it, that's why Thunderbolts is better than most of Marvel's post-Endgame films, because it has an actor as charismatic as Pugh in it. And I just don't think these are good reasons to like a movie. Or at least, they're not reasons that I would like a movie. I don't understand all the praise for Florence Pugh. You simply have to watch any of the marketing to see why. And the depression, shame, guilt, talking about your feelings all the time, therapy, that's not what I want in a movie. I saw Joker 2. I left that movie feeling drained. Felt like I'd been punched in the gut, and that's not what you want in a superhero movie. And that was what you were meant to feel in Joker 2. It felt like they hated you, because I think they did. I think they wanted to ruin the Joker as a character. And I can understand why people into depression and wallowing in their own pit of unhappiness may enjoy that kind of thing. But it isn't for me. So when you get reviews such as, "This is a hit and miss mess," with Florence Pugh being the saving grace, it seems that it's going to be less than a 3 to me, because I can't see Florence Pugh being the saving grace. The latter studio is behind Midsommar, the gruesome thriller where Pugh came on hard with the trauma. Seems to be a common thing for her. And I'm just not the target demographic for that. The one that wants action movies like John Wick and explosions, justice, and the villain being subjected to what he deserves. I want a shootout as to the end of it, not a mental health provider being sent out. And that's what you get in this movie. The eventual showdown between the Thunderbolts and Bob's supervillain is ambitious, if ungainly. Takes place in largely surreal internal spaces that Yelena dubs interconnected shame rooms, where the characters battle their emotions, fighting for healing, and the climax makes for an admirable attempt at doing right by the movie's mental health themes. Thunderbolts often irritates because of the depression and trauma, but if it ultimately works, it's all due to Pugh. So if you don't think she's amazing, you're not gonna like the film. All you're gonna be liked with is depression, trauma, and a climax in shame rooms. It's the difference between a guy punching another one in the face until he beats him into submission and is subjected to a death as horrifying as the evil acts he committed through the movie. The more evil the character, the worse the death scene has to be. One of the basic rules of cinema. Compared to something like the CW shows, where in The Flash, many of the villains weren't defeated by a fight. They were simply talked down and convinced that, have you ever tried being not evil anymore? I believe in you. I think you can be better. This is the split between target demographics and what you need a movie to be. And Thunderbolts definitely seems to be leading towards the Handmaid's Tale audience. And that's just not me. If I wanted to watch someone get banged against their will, I would have auditioned in Hollywood. But I do find it funny that now, places like the Mary Sue can't even comprehend that there's different audiences. They have no idea why people may not like the Thunderbolts, because they're the target demographic, and they can't comprehend another one. In fact, they think even talking about there being a different demographic, a different way of making a movie, well, that's just performatively sexist. Everybody's like them, and if you're not, you're lying or a horrible person. You're boring. And it's not often I think I can predict whether you like the movie or not, simply based on your own belief system. But I think the reviews for the Thunderbolts spell it out. And so while the majority of them like it, I think it's because the majority of them are of the same demographic with exactly the same belief system, which is why I think it have around an 88% hit rate with this question. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know down in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe, more videos like this in the future, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.